So in the co-main event of UFC 239, Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes fought. This was a fight where Nunes was favored about a 4-1. And this was the storyline, at least, was that this was the last UFC champion between 135 and 145 that she hadn't beaten yet. So once she gets past Holly Holm, then you have no argument. Now there is the point to be made that Jermaine Durandamy was a 145-pound champion who then gave up her belt on her own accord. And Nunes and Durandamy haven't fought yet. I don't know if Durandamy would even take a fight with Nunes, considering the fact that she wouldn't even take a fight with Cyborg, but that's neither here nor there. As far as this matchup goes, before this fight happened, I put up a preview video saying that there was a chance that Holly could actually pull the upset here, and the reason why is that the toughest fights for Nunes have been the Shevchenko fights, and that Holm, in a way, has a similar style in that she likes to counter strike, fight from the outside, and pick her shots. But one of the things that worried me about Holly Holm was that in the fight with Cyborg, she really wasn't willing to get into punching range that much, and as a result, she got outstruck pretty badly by Cyborg. So the question with this fight would be: is if she's worried about Nunes' power as well, is she not going to be willing to get in range, and then as a result, just not throw and get outstruck herself? And that's exactly what happened. Most of this fight from her, she was not throwing a whole lot of punches, and it seemed like when she did, she get caught on a counter by Nunes, and she just didn't feel comfortable throwing punches. So for her being this world class boxer. Obviously, she's 37. She's taken a lot of shots to the head at this point. I don't know if her chin's as good as it used to be. And even if it was as good as it used to be, you're still talking about Amanda Nunes, who hits extremely hard. So for whatever reason, she just did not feel comfortable at all exchanging punches with Nunes. And as a result, a lot of her striking just became kicks from the outside, just kind of throwing out kicks at the legs, kind of like what we're seeing here, where she's looking to throw a kick at the knee. But as she's doing that, Nunes gets out of the way and then lands her own kick, lands a head kick over the top, and from there Holly Holm goes to sleep. So for me, the biggest thing I noticed is that Holly Holm wasn't willing to box with Amanda Nunes. Her strategy just seemed to be to throw a bunch of leg kicks and throw a bunch of kicks from the outside, where she could just kind of like kick from the outside and not, at least in her mind, not risk getting caught into punching range with Amanda Nunes. But while she wasn't in punching range here, she was definitely in kicking range and got dropped with the head kick, got finished on the ground, and that was it for her. So for Holly Holm, she's lost a lot of her recent fights. Uh, I don't really see the argument for her being in another title fight unless she puts together a big run. And with her being 37, I don't know if it's even in her interest right now to put together another big run to earn a title shot. And if she does earn another title shot at Nunes, I don't see how she's going to be any better off in a year or two from now than she was tonight. So to me, this kind of seems like the end of Holly Holm as a champion. She had her one fight against Ronda Rousey where she won the belt, but never defended the belt, and I don't think she's ever going to win another belt again, let alone defend another belt. So that's a little bit unfortunate for her because she seems like a pretty nice person, but unfortunately, Amanda Nunes is at the top, and to be a champion, you have to be the best person at the top. And being very good isn't good enough if there's one person out there who's better than you, and that's the case with Amanda Nunes. As far as Nunes goes, doesn't it's not clear who she's going to fight next. She's talking about fighting at 145 next, so that means she likely gets the winner of Cyborg and Felicia Spencer. So in other words, she likely fights Chris Cyborg again. That would be assuming that Chris Cyborg signs a deal with the UFC, because this fight was Felicia Spencer, her last fight with the UFC. So if she beats Felicia Spencer, she could potentially just take the deal with the UFC, fight against Amanda Nunes, and that's the fight you have there. Maybe she thinks that she's worth more than she actually is and doesn't take a deal with the UFC, and throughout those negotiations, the UFC is like, screw it, we're just going to give this fight to someone else. As far as who that other person would be, I'm not quite sure. The most interesting storyline you have, I guess there are two people with interesting storylines you have left right now. You have Jermaine Durandamy, because she's a former UFC champion that Nunes hasn't beaten yet. And you have Kat Zingano, who's coming off of a loss, but is the last person to have a win over Amanda Nunes. So I think either of those two you could potentially push in there if Cyborg or Felicia Spencer don't work out in the near term. But either way, huge win for Amanda Nunes. If you had any questions about whether or not she was the greatest women's fighter of all time, you have your answer now. Yes, she has 4 losses on her record, including the one to Kat Zingano, but it's clear that the fighter she's become is greater than any other fighter there's been. The only other person who I think could have an argument at this point might have been, or not, I'm trying to think who it is, Rose Namajunas. Rose looked fantastic in her wins over Ioana and Jacek, looked fantastic against Andrade, but then she got pile driven on her head, and now is talking about not fighting again. And during that fight with Andrade, I was looking at Rose and thinking, wow, this might be the most technical women's fighter I've ever seen. But that fight didn't end up working out for her. Meanwhile, Amanda Nunes is out here knocking out Chris Cyborg, knocking out just a multiple time world champion in Holly Holm. And it's not even just that she knocked out Holly Holm, but it's the fact that Holly Holm didn't even want to box with her. That was so impressive to me. So big win for Amanda Nunes. She's starting to run out of people who are worth fighting her, but I guess when you're good, that's the problem you have, and it sucks that 145 doesn't have a deeper weight division because you figure she could probably dig in deeper there and beat some of those girls, but there just isn't a whole lot of talent up there.